Hi, I'm Olivia, and I'm a nanny. Being a nanny is something I absolutely love. There's just something magical about helping raise these tiny humans and watching them grow. I've been doing this for years now, and honestly, most families I work with are amazing. But then there are some that, well, let me tell you about what happened last month. I was working for two families at the time. First, there was Mr. James, this incredibly kind single dad who'd lost his wife a few years back. The way he cared for his little boy Steve just melted my heart. Then there were the Richardsons, loaded with money, but let's just say they had interesting views about spending it. Everything in our world runs on contracts, kind of like a gym membership. Even if you don't show up, you still pay. Makes sense, right? I also had this cool thing called a nanny share. A little bit about this nanny share thing. It's actually pretty clever when it works right. Think of it like splitting an Uber ride. Everyone saves a bit of money, and the driver makes a little extra. In my case, when families share my time, they each pay 2/3 of my usual rate. It's a win-win. Parents save money, and I earn more for handling extra kids. Being a nanny wasn't just a job for me. It was my passion. I loved those kids like they were my own family. Spent countless hours playing games, teaching them new things, and watching them grow. Working for the Richardsons seemed perfect. David and Anna, my employers, were always punctual with payments and seemed to appreciate my dedication. The week started like any other, except the Richardsons were heading to Bali for what they called a much-needed break. Before they left, Mrs. Anna Richardson asks me,
"Could you watch Max the Sunday after we get back? We'll need time to recover."
"Sure," I said, setting up for my usual 8 to 4 shift. According to my contract, I'd still get paid since I was keeping those hours open for them. The trip went fine, and they texted when they landed, all normal so far. But things got quite interesting. I'm literally walking out my door at 7:30 the next morning when my phone buzzes.
"Max just woke up. Come at 8:30 instead."
Later that day, Mrs. Richardson had another request.
"We're thinking of having 2 date nights this week. Could you stay late? We'll just pay you for all the extra hours at the end of the week. Easier to handle it all at once."
I agreed to cover 2 extra date nights when they returned, knowing they'd probably be jet-lagged and needing some time to themselves. Those extra shifts weren't easy. 8 additional hours of bedtime routines, story reading, and making sure everything was perfect. But I didn't mind. I genuinely cared about helping them transition back smoothly. When the time came for me to get paid, I talked to Mr. Richardson about the 16 hours I'd worked. His response was brief.
"Need to check with Anna first. We'll pay you soon."
My heart sank when Anna's message popped up on my phone that evening.
"Thanks for covering these past weeks. Since you were paid for the full week while we were in Bali and weren't actually working, we'll apply those hours to your recent babysitting. We'll pay you for 8 hours instead."
I stared at my phone, reading the message over and over. The money they'd paid me during their vacation wasn't a gift. It was part of my regular salary, just like any other employee would receive during their employer's vacation. My hands trembled as I realized they were trying to avoid paying me for hours I'd actually worked. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the betrayal. All those extra hours, all that dedication, only to be treated like my time wasn't valuable. For the first time since I started working as a nanny, I questioned whether all the love and care I put into my job was worth it, when some people saw me as nothing more than a convenience they could shortchange. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next day, I'd have to make a decision. Stand up for myself and risk losing a job I loved, or accept being taken advantage of. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from the people you least expect, and this one was teaching me that being passionate about your work doesn't mean you should let others devalue it. I'd always been taught to remain professional, but something inside me snapped that day. My hands were shaking as I pulled up my contract, taking a screenshot of the vacation pay clause. I tried to keep my message polite but firm when I reminded them about our agreement. Anna's response came instantly, making my phone buzz with anger.
"We asked you to come at 8:30, not 8. We're already being generous paying you for our holiday. Your hour tracking needs to be more accurate. This is unacceptable. We'll pay you for 15.5 hours.
I stared at my screen in disbelief. They were fighting me over $12.50, less than what they probably spent on a single breakfast in Bali. My finger hovered over the contract section about scheduling changes requiring 24-hour notice. That something in me had reached its limit. All those nights staying late, all those extra miles I'd gone for their family, all that dedication, just to be nickel and dimed like this. That's when I decided to stop playing nice. If they wanted to be petty about numbers, I had some interesting calculations of my own to share. As you see, there was one tiny thing none of us paid attention to. Stay tuned for how I dealt with this case of stingy millionaires in the next video. Like and subscribe.